Hey everyone, welcome back to The Mind of Thomas. Although summer vacation is coming to an end in a little while, I wanted to share some memories from a summer camp I went to a few years ago. And since my good friend Legit Charge was just a counselor at that same summer camp, I figured it was a good time to make a retrospective video. So, without further ado, I proudly present to you the story of Kids Camp 2015. So I was in my home state of Alabama back around the summertime of 2015. I was going to kids camp with my friends Harrison, aka Legit Charge, Colby, Connor, and Harrison's uncles Samuel and Nathan. Naturally, I was excited to go as it was my first time at a real spend-the-night summer camp, and I got to hang out with friends as well. But little did I know what horrors awaited me. Or, well, at least what seemed like horrors to the younger version of me. You see, I've come to realize that some of these so-called horrors I experienced at kids camp were actually mine or one of my friends' faults. But we didn't think then and thought we were being treated a little unfairly. So take some of this with a grain of salt. Alright, let's move on. So we arrived at the camp and all introduced ourselves, and so did the counselors. Now, there were a lot of counselors at the camp, but I'm only going to name the three who are the most relevant to the story, although I'm not going to use their real names for privacy, so I'll just call them Mr. Carlos, Miss Sky, and Miss Jade. Alright, sounds good to me. They handed us little books that had the rules, the itinerary, and other stuff in it as well. The rules were fairly basic, stuff like respect the staff and no swearing and everything like that. The itinerary had really fun stuff planned like swimming, canoeing, and game time, although we weren't able to do a lot of it the first day when we arrived because it was raining. However, this did give us a little more time to get settled with where we were staying. We stayed in this building on the campsite that contained a main lobby, an upstairs room where the girls stayed, and two downstairs rooms where the boys stayed. The rooms were made out of mostly wood and contained rows and rows of bunk beds. I chose to sleep on the top bunk because I thought to myself, if these support beams crumble, then if I'm on the top, I won't get smushed. And they didn't show any signs of crumbling or breaking or anything like that, but it was nice having that peace of mind. We didn't do much outside that day because of the rain, but we were introduced to the showers, which were extremely cold for me, so I ended up only using them for a few seconds at a time. It was also the first time I went to our nightly movie time, which was super awesome because we just got to watch movies and eat popcorn all night, and it ended up becoming my favorite part of the camp. With that out of the way, let's move on to the next day where things start to get a little more interesting. I usually wake up earlier than most people, but at kids camp, you were only allowed to officially wake up and get moving at 7 o'clock. So I just sat there, lying in the top bunk of my bed, waiting for the wake-up call, which I was told was music. I was expecting the music to wake us up to be something soft and classical, to wake the kids up refreshingly. But no, I was wrong. They woke us up with this.
This is a morning like no other. Never again will it be here.
My friends and I hated that song. Some of us still hate it even to this day, including me. They played it literally every morning, bursting loud throughout the entire building. It was just super annoying. We all got up and got dressed and went to the lobby where they had more songs, but they wanted us to do like dance routines and hand motions too. Harrison and I had had enough of these songs and we didn't really feel like doing any dancing or anything, so we just kind of hid out in the corner until it was over. After that was done, we headed out to the cafeteria for breakfast. It was at some point during this breakfast that I noticed Harrison had gone missing. I was wondering where he was until he came back to our table crying. I asked him what happened, and he said Mr. Carlos had taken him out back to scold him for putting his head in his shirt during prayer time. Apparently, he was just trying to look like a ninja, and he didn't know that that was considered disrespectful during prayer time, but he said Mr. Carlos thought he was lying. Now, I didn't agree that it was right for Harrison to try and look like a ninja during prayer time, but I thought it was absurd that Mr. Carlos would try and falsely accuse him of lying. So I told Miss Sky about it, and she said there was nothing she could do since Mr. Carlos was her co-worker. So I went back to my table, and then Mr. Carlos came over. He accused me of tattletaling and said I would get in big trouble if I did it again. Now, looking back on this, Mr. Carlos probably just misunderstood Harrison, but at the time, Harrison and I didn't think so. We hated Mr. Carlos and thought he was abusing his power. Over the years, though, we've come to forgive Mr. Carlos and now are on really good terms with him. Alright, now on to the next highlight of the story. It was time for night swimming in the camp pool, something we didn't get to do the day we arrived because it was raining. To swim in the pool, we first had to pass the YMCA swim test. Now, before I came, I practiced my swimming extensively so that I was guaranteed to pass, which I did. However, there was one kid in my friend group that did not pass. It was Harrison. Apparently, Harrison had gone to a camp before this that had a more leisurely swim test, where literally the only requirements were you had to be able to swim back and forth. No real effort required. However, the YMCA swim test didn't take the bare minimum for an answer, which was what Harrison did. So they let him only swim in the shallow end, whereas everybody else was swimming in the deep end. I offered to swim with him in the shallow end, but he said he didn't want to ruin our fun. Eventually, however, he talked his way into retaking the swim test, passed, and was able to come hang out with all of us in the deep end. Now, the next part of his story takes place a few days into the camp. Mr. Carlos guided us all on a hike tour through the woods, where he would show us famous sights. However, these famous sights were all corny jokes, like a cave being the Bat Cave, or a rock being Pride Rock from The Lion King, or a lamppost being the lamppost from Narnia. I understand the humor of it now and think he was being really funny, but back then I thought it was just cheesy and dumb. Finally, he said there was a certain tree that George Washington rested on during the Revolutionary War. Then I piped up and said something like, "That's not true because Alabama wasn't one of the original 13 colonies." Then he replied back saying something like, "And Thomas needs to shut his mouth because he thinks he knows everything." Looking back at what I said, it probably came off as really rude, arrogant, and very know-it-all-ish, but at the time, it just made me really upset, and so I cried the rest of the hike. Now, although I've talked about mostly the negative experience I had at kids camp in this video, I had a lot of great ones as well, like swimming, canoeing, trust fall, game night, movie time. All of those were amazing. Heck, I even went back to kids camp the next year and had a way better experience from this time. So overall, I'd say I really enjoyed kids camp. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a big fat thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more epic videos like this one. Also, make sure you stay tuned to my channel for a part 2 of this video containing a special interview about kids camp with legit charge.